Folks, our next speaker until recently was the president of California's state senate, and he's now a candidate for the United States Senate this November. Let me tell you a little bit about Kevin de León. Kevin was raised in San Diego by his immigrant mom who worked as a housekeeper to make ends meet. He went on to graduate from Pitzer College and worked as a community organizer, teaching U.S. citizenship classes and advocating for public schools. He was, with a strong support from our union, he was first elected to the state assembly in 2006. As an assembly member, he authored legislation to invest $400 million for parks and low-income neighborhoods throughout California. He was elected to the state senate in 2010. And in 2014, his colleagues elected him to be the leader of the California Senate, the first Latino to serve as president in more than a century. And during his time in the state Senate, Kevin has championed the passage of drug price transparency legislation. This new law requires health plans and insurers to report information related to prescription drug pricing. Allocated over $500 million in Prop 56 tobacco tax revenue to increase access to care for people covered by Medi-Cal. He created a permanent funding source for affordable housing that will generate $250 million a year and create 57,000 jobs over the next few years. And just this month, Governor Jerry Brown signed Kevin's bill that is the most far-reaching climate legislation created in the country. Senate Bill 100 will lay the groundwork for 100% of California's electrical power to come from renewable energy sources by 2045. Kevin is running for the United States Senate against Senator Dianne Feinstein. We also invited Senator Feinstein here to be with us. She's doing some very important, obviously important, work in Washington, D.C. around the Supreme Court hearings. We offered to have her come through by video conference, and frankly, disappointed that she chose not to do that. So now we have a chance to really get to know Kevin. He's going to talk a little bit about where he stands on the issues important to us: healthcare reform, parity for mental health care, worker rights, immigrant rights, and I hope we'll have a little bit of time to then take some questions or give some questions to Kevin. Let's welcome Senator Kevin de León. NUHW, welcome, please.
Well, good morning. I said good morning. Buenos dias. A couple things. One is, first and foremost, good morning to each and every one of you. To my very good friend Sal Rosselli, I want to thank you very much for your incredible leadership, of the incredible women and men of NUHW. You are on the front lines for quality health care for all Americans, for all Californians. And for that, I think we will always be indebted to each and every one of you. I just want to say it's an incredible honor to be here this morning, this Sunday morning, with all of you here at this incredible conference here in Burlingame, California. And as Sal just mentioned a few moments ago, I heard there was someone else who was supposed to be up here with me on the same stage. But I know how my opponent feels about debates, but I can tell you this, that I couldn't be more thrilled to be here face-to-face with each and every one of you. Now, for those of you who don't know me, and I think there's quite a few folks here perhaps who don't know me, perhaps have heard of me, allow me to introduce myself once again. My name is Kevin de León, and I'm the youngest child of a single immigrant mother with a third-grade education. My mother had the courage of her convictions to cross a border against a current wave of bigotry, to come to the greatest state and the greatest country in the world. My mother was a housekeeper. She was a hotel worker, and she was also an LVN. And this was a woman who worked her fingers to the bone. And it was through her strong work ethic, it was where I learned the value of hard work. Because this was the woman, a single mother, who put the roof over my head, by paying the rent. She was the one who put the food on the table. And she was the one who put the clothes on my back. And because of her, I am who I am today. And as Sal just mentioned a few moments ago, I did become the first Latino leader in more than a century to lead the California State Senate, your California State Senate. The most progressive legislative body in America. And I am the author of the most far-reaching climate change policy, if not in the nation, in the world, that allows our children to breathe clean air into their lungs by moving forward with a very clear legal mandate that the state of California, regardless of who occupies the White House today, that the state of California will move forward and send a message to the rest of the nation as well as the rest of the world, that the fifth largest economy in the world is going to go to 100% clean energy. We have no other choice. That's what we're doing. We're moving forward. The state of California, the strongest net neutrality laws in America. And I was also honored to pass in the California State Senate single payer health care for Californians in the California State Senate. And also, too, because we care deeply about who we are and where we come from, I wanted to make sure that our great state was a state that protected all of our communities. And I authored a measure that you may have heard of. It's somewhat controversial. It's called Senate Bill 54, technically, the California Values Act, but it's also known as the Sanctuary State Bill. That is my bill. And because of this measure, both Donald Trump and the Attorney General Jeff Sessions sued the state of California, to which I said, bring it on. Bring it on. And the federal judge, in fact, the Republican federal judge, appointed by then President George W. Bush, another Republican, actually opined on this lawsuit in Sacramento a few months ago. And he made it very clear that our sanctuary state bill in the state of California is in fact constitutional, and it is the law of the land of California, whether they like it or not. Because in this great state, we value who we are, and we value our diversity. And it doesn't make a difference if you're a few generations removed from Scotland, from the UK, from Italy, from Wales or Ireland or elsewhere, or if you are part of that deep migration from the deep south of African Americans fleeing Jim Crow laws, coming to the West Coast to seek a better life, or whether you are from Mexico or Central America, or you're Indian or Native American, or you're from China or somewhere else in the Pacific Rim. We're all Americans and we're all Californians. And in this great state, we value our diversity. We don't ban it, we don't deport it, and we as sure as hell don't wall it off, not in a great state like California. And my friends, that is our strength of who we are as a leading state, because the rest of the world looks towards California for leadership. They don't look towards the inaction of Washington, D.C. In this great state, I was honored to lead the negotiations, elevating the minimum wage to the highest in the nation, $15 an hour. Now, you compare that to Washington's inaction, $7.25 for the nation. You compare that, our environmental laws, our climate change laws. You compare that to Washington's inaction, the continued dependency on fossil fuels and on foreign fossil fuels. All of that smog that chokes the lungs out of our young children's, chokes the oxygen, I should say, of the young girls' lungs. For our RNs in the ER rooms here today, the number one reason for absenteeism in our public school system is due to asthma. Our children have a right to breathe clean air into their lungs and drink clean water. But this is the bold stance that we take in California, that regardless, who occupies the White House, we will continue to lead. We will continue to disrupt the establishment authority, the status quo, because I can tell you this. If you think that Washington is working for you, then I would say vote for my opponent. If you think that California is working for you and it's time that we export California values to Washington, then please vote for me. I am your candidate. Together, we are in a battle for the soul of our nation because we must defeat a Republican Party which has sold its soul to a president without one. And that's why it is so vital that we remain America's exceptional example, a beacon of hope and opportunity in a very uncertain world, that we're not going to allow one electoral aberration reverse generations of progress at the height of our historic diversity, our scientific advancement, our economic output, and our sense of global responsibility. Not in a great state like California, my friends. We all know that these are very unprecedented times in our nation's history. These are very dangerous times in our nation's history. We have a president that makes Richard Nixon look like a choir boy in comparison. That's why we need a voice of change. A voice that's going to be on the front lines, not on the sidelines. A voice that's not going to ask for patience with this president, with the hopes that this president will be a good president in the future, especially after we've seen what he's done with the Muslim ban, especially after we've seen what he's done with LGBTQIA members of our community, especially as we've seen what he's done with ICE and unleashing that terror on our communities up and down the state of California and throughout the country. Especially after we've seen what he did by pulling out of the Paris Accords, endangering our climate change policies, not just for our state, but for the nation and the entire world. And especially by making that statement that we should be patient with this president, with the hopes that he will be a good president in the future. Making that statement 3 weeks after the tragedy of Charlottesville, Virginia. Watching neo-Nazis, members of the Ku Klux Klan, as well as white supremacists, march in unison together with torches, saying, "We shall not be replaced." And the day after, we had the tragedy of a young woman who lost her life when you had a white supremacist who purposefully ran his car into her as well as others. To actually ask that we be patient with the hopes that he will be a good president shows a grave disconnection between what is happening in our communities today, the fight for our collective bargaining rights, the attacks on working men and women throughout the state, throughout the country. With Janus versus Ashby, Local District 31, and the U.S. Supreme Court decision. The attacks on retirement security, because now it's about retirement insecurity. We have so many Californians today, even being the 5th largest economy in the world, who have no access to retirement security, a defined benefit, or even a defined contribution at their place of work. And so many Californians, in fact, 7 million Californians today work at a place that has no retirement security at all whatsoever. So we have 7 million Californians who retire when their arms, their backs, their shoulders, their waist, their legs physically give out. And we know that Social Security won't suffice to put a roof over your head, to put clothes on your back, to put food on the table, to buy your medications. And this is why we are in a battle for the existence of who we are as a great state, as a state of resistance. But we cannot win if the politicians in Washington continue to resist the resistance. We cannot win if we adhere to the same old status quo, who keep preaching the same old, because the same old is not working for all of us. We all want universal health care. We all want Medicare for all, not Medicare for some. We want Medicare for all. We want to make sure that this is a right, a universal privilege, not for the few, not for the elite, not an exclusive precondition for the wealthy, but to make sure that every working Californian has that right, is not worried or burdened with the thought, with the stress, with the anxiety that an emergency room visit will bankrupt them, or their insurer is simply not going to approve the treatment that they need, or that they have to take more money out of their pocket for copayment, a top copayment on top of another copayment. This is our time, my fellow Democrats, and any Republicans are here today too, because I'm respectful. I'm very respectful of everybody and what their opinions and thoughts are. But this is our time to come together. This is our time to stand up for each other. This is our time to back each other up, to have a new voice, a voice that's reflective of California today, not California's past, a voice that will fight for you, to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, to make sure that we have Medicare for all, not Medicare for some, to fight so our children can breathe clean air into their lungs, to fight so we can have sensible immigration reform, normalizing the path for citizenship for millions of families that have been here 10, 20, 25, 30 years, who pledge their allegiance to the red, white, and blue, who obey our laws, who pay their taxes, but had not been able to normalize their legal status because we have a Congress that lacks the courage of their conviction to do the right thing in Washington, D.C. This is not rocket science. This is simple. This is easy. This is within reach. This is what can be done. But it's about leadership. It's about leadership and having the courage of their convictions to do everything within their power to move policies that improve the human condition for all individuals, regardless of who you are and where you come from, regardless of the hue of your skin, regardless of who you love, and regardless of which God you pray to. We all deserve these rights as Americans and as Californians. We have a historic opportunity before each and every one of us. And let me say this finally. We're all Democrats, but we're all different too. We're dreamers and we're pragmatists, and we're different shades in between. But we have made history before in this great state. I'm not supposed to be here today on this stage, behind this podium and microphone. But that's what makes California such a magical place, that the youngest child of a single immigrant mother with a third-grade education, and the only one to graduate, not from college, the only one to graduate from high school in my family. But it was because of others who believed in me, who gave me an opportunity to succeed. I was not valedictorian or graduated summa cum laude. No, I went through my trials and tribulations. I went through my ups and downs like each and every one of us do. And I had others who believed in me, and had others who picked me up. I had others who believed in me when I, quite frankly, didn't believe in myself. But that's why I believe strongly that's when we stand up for each other, and we back each other up. We've made history before in this great state. And there's no question in my mind that come November 6th, we can make history again, and we can have a new voice, a progressive voice, a voice of change, a voice of a proven track record that uses his political capital to improve the human condition for all human beings, for all Californians. It's time for a new day. It's time for a new California. It is time to take our country back. With that, God bless each and every one of you. Let's go out there and win November 6th and take our country back. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Please. One more time, folks. Let's hear it for Kevin de León. Huh?
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have some time for questions.
Thank you.
All right? Kevin's questions. Mike over here, please. Porfirio.
Good morning. My name is Porfirio Quintano, and I am a board member, and I am proud to be the part of the Sanctuary Union. NUHW is a Sanctuary Union. But I want to ask you a question. If you get elected, would you willing to support the HR 4253 that is called American Promise Act and SB 144 that is called the Security Act? These two bills are for TPS holders. You know that there are 400 people under this status, and Donald Trump gave it the last extension. And when these people have the last day to leave the country, they will leave 200,000 children, like those in the crisis that is in the south on the border. So are you willing to support, are you willing to work and fight for have a way to be in another situation for these 400 people that are coming from 13 countries?
Sure. Bueno, antes que nada, Porfirio, muy buenos días y gracias por la pregunta. ¿Te refieres a TPS? Y quisiera saber, no, por favor, no, si se puede. ¿Usted es de El Salvador? ¿Usted es mexicano? Ah, usted es catracho. Okay. Ah, perfecto. Bueno, es okay. Well, well, that's good morning, Porfirio. And what Porfirio is making reference to are two congressional bills, one on the House side and one on the Senate side. And they deal specifically with the issue of TPS. The TPS being temporary protective status, which has been given to immigrants from certain parts of the world. And the largest number of recipients of TPS come from Central America, specifically from Honduras, from El Salvador, folks fleeing civil war, war-torn areas of deep strife, a lot of killings, and folks every year, every other year have been renewing their temporary status. The Trump administration has ceased with temporary protective status and has given a strict order for them to leave the country by the end of the year or by next year. So let me be very clear. I think that's inhumane. I think if we had TPS status proffered to Norwegians or Scandinavians, I don't think he'd be asking them to leave. I think he would be offering citizenship right away, you know. So unfortunately, the issue of immigration is not that simple, black and white. There's an ethnicity issue here. There's a racial issue to the issue of the current debate, the polemic, polarizing debate in Washington, D.C., as it relates. But let me be very clear here. Washington has failed California, because California is home to the largest number of immigrants in the nation, whether they're TPS, whether they are dreamers, whether they're hardworking men and women who you all know, and someone you have as part of your family members. And Washington has continuously failed California and the rest of the country. And that's why I led on sanctuary state. That's why I led on negotiating driver's license with Governor Jerry Brown. That's why I led on securing $40 million so members who are legal permanent residents could naturalize and become U.S. citizens. And that's why I led with about $20 million for legal services for dreamers who are under threats of deportation. And let me give you just a really quick story. He's not TPS, but his name is Romulo. Romulo Abelica. Romulo Abelica is a hardworking family member, father, a loving father who was just maybe a block away from his daughter's school. and ICE agents pulled him over and dehumanized him and humiliated him in front of his daughter, just a block away from their school in the morning, and took him away. And out of an outpour of anger and dismay from the community, I and others got involved, and Romulo now is free. They were going to deport him. But here's a man who's been here, I think off the top of my head, at least 20 years. But think about this. You heard the debates, right? Why don't you do it the right way? You've been here this long. How come you haven't legalized your status? It's like a Kafka novel, in a way. It's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. It's kind of sort of upside down. Well, you can't legalize your status if there is no criteria, a program that's set up for you to legalize your status, because the Congress in Washington have lacked the courage or the convictions to move forward with the law that would allow them to normalize their legal status. So that demonstrates Washington's ineptness, and that's why in California we continue to lead. And so the answer is unequivocally, it's not just TPS, it's the dreamers, and then not just the dreamers, it's also to the millions of undocumented immigrants who are hardworking members, who are not TPS members, who are not dreamers themselves. You know, it's comprehensive immigration reform. But being the federal government, and only the federal government knows how to create larger bureaucracies. And, you know, you got TPS, you got dreamers, you got farm workers, you know. You need one comprehensive immigration reform to normalize the status of people who deserve to be Americans in the United States of America. So that's my answer for you, Porfirio.
Right, Mike over here.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Kevin De Leon, thank you for addressing us. I'm Eric Pierce. I'm a social worker at Kaiser Hospital, LAMC. LAMC in the house? Okay, come on, give it up. Kevin, this is an ask today, this morning. I ask that you make a pledge in front of all of us to healthcare, that you declare unequivocally that healthcare is a human right. Yeah. That when you get in office, because you will get in office, that you will,
thank you.
That you will, that insurance companies will no longer dictate our care, that we will create a single payer system where our care is accessible to all in, no one out.
All in, right? Let me say the following. Is that we're the wealthiest state and the wealthiest nation in the world. And we spend more money on healthcare than any other Western industrial nation. But our health outcomes are disastrous in comparison. I was in Japan last year, and I had a series of meetings in Japan. And one of the meetings was with the minister, then the Minister of Health for Japan. It was very surreal, because it was a wonderful conversation. And the Minister of Health, the health minister of Japan, says, you know, the third largest economy in the world, which is Japan, GDP, we have universal health care in Japan. And we have a commission that deals with drug transparency in terms of pricing with the pharmaceutical companies, because we purchase in bulk. We have that leveraging power. They also deal with the issue of health outcomes. You know, the population in Japan is getting older now. They're living longer. Also the issue of cost containments. So they deal with this stuff on a normal basis. It's not alien, it's not foreign, it's not complex. He says, the challenge you have in the United States of America is that you can't even have a discussion on the issue of health care. Universal health care, public option, single payer, Medicare for all. He says, you can't even have a rational discussion because you have managed to politicize the issue of health care. And it kind of hit me like a 2x4, because sometimes we normalize the crazy chaoticness of the tone and tenor of our own country. And we politicize the issue of healthcare. Healthcare is healthcare. And having the right to healthcare is a universal right. And if you believe in that, then you believe in Medicare for all. It's just that simple. And never let anyone tell you And never let anyone tell you, because by the way, we spend $3.3 trillion on an annual basis on healthcare. That's both public as well as private. That's Kaiser, Blue Shield, Blue Cross, that's everybody here, and that's on the public side too. We spend $3.3 trillion. Well, a study came out, says that we would spend $3 trillion with Medicare for all, single payer. And if you don't believe me, then you got the Koch brothers to thank for it, because it was the Koch brothers who were the authors of the study itself. I think they were looking for a different type of outcome, when they initiated the study, but it came out that it would be $3 trillion on an annual basis. Think about it. Not having to fear about the co-payments, not having to fear when you pick up the phone that your insurer is going to say, sorry, no, can't do that. Think about the fact that how many folks stay on locked to their jobs because it's not even so much the salary, or the working conditions, it's the health benefits that you need for you and your children. That you would leave that job in a heartbeat if you could. But you're locked because those health benefits mean so much to you. You can go from job to job without the fear of some catastrophic thing happening to you or a family member and you can't afford it. And fiscally, it's just much more efficient to do it. So you have my pledge. You have my pledge.
Hi, my name is Matt Van Nuys.
Good morning, Matt. Van Nuys?
Pardon? Yes, Matthew Van Nuys.
Van Nuys, like Van Nuys,
like Van Nuys,
San Fernando
California.
Valley?
I should be getting rent checks from them, but I'm not, but we'll see what happens. I work at Janus of Santa Cruz, along with some cohorts here. Where
Santa Cruz?
Yeah,
Okay,
Santa Cruz.
okay.
And so far, I think we're the only drug and alcohol treatment facility under NUHW so far, so we're proud of that one. We deal with the front lines of the opioid epidemic. And, but I'm sure we're not the only ones. I'm sure there are many people in this room who deal with the ravages of the opioid epidemic, in large part due to the good work of the fine folks at Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family and all those folks. Which has laid a swath of destruction through families, through communities, which leads many to, one of the best results is to find yourself in prison, and one of the worst results is to die. So my question to you is, what do you plan to do about the opioid epidemic and the justice system and things of that nature?
Well, that's a very good question. And let me say, with regards to the opiate epidemic, that is ravaging at so many parts of the country and parts of California. And it's a little more unique to certain parts of California and certain demographics. It's not just the opiate epidemic, it's the crystal meth epidemic. It is what was at one time a crack cocaine epidemic. But we dealt with crack cocaine in a very different way, right? We didn't offer mental health services. We didn't offer addiction services. We offered prison. And it was a different approach in how we did that. And it's very important to sort of highlight, if you will, the outpouring of support, which is critical, we must do. But the approaches were very, very different, right? When folks were addicted to crack cocaine, it was like imprison them and lose a generation and 2 generations who were incarcerated, who never got the services that they needed. This is ravaging, many parts of our country. And this is something that I would clearly, and this is something that should be done in a bipartisan fashion, to move forward the necessary resources to deal with the addictions, but also to the underlying causes of the opiate addiction: high unemployment, underemployment, the inability to hold a job and pay for the mortgage or for the rents. You lose your job or two, and then what happens? Our self-esteem is shot, and what happens? Divorces happen, you lose your children, you lose your house, you lose everything that you define yourself by, that makes you proud of who you are, that foundation, that solid rock foundation. Once that is shattered completely, then the addiction issues come in, and I've dealt with this stuff in many instances, and this is why I'm gonna make a correlation. I'm not gonna politicize this, but this is when you go to certain parts of the country and you have a strong man who comes in and says, I know why you lost your job, and I know why there's a high level of opiate addictions here. It's because of those people that look like them. And that's when you pit one group against another and you divide the country instead of bringing the country together, instead of uniting us together with one cause, regardless of if you're white, Latino, African American, Asian American, racially mixed. Poverty is poverty. And this issue of addictions is a real critical issue, and how it impacts our mental health. How we deal with mental health issues, how we numb our pain with alcohol, with drugs, illicit drugs, that to point rewires our thinking, and sometimes permanently. This is something I'm doing right now. On the ballot in November, I'm going to please ask you to vote for it, because it's my proposition that I wrote. It's called Proposition 2. Prop 2, no place like home. And what it is $2.2 billion, that's with a capital B, $2.2 billion for permanent housing solutions with individuals who are chronically homeless, who are mentally ill. And many of these folks have the addictions. It's $2.2 billion. Proposition 2. Now, my name is not on it because of the weird federal laws that don't allow my name to be on other stuff, even though I'm the author of it. Leave it to the federal regulations and government to always make things so much more complicated than they have to be. But this is an issue that impacts all of us, and this is an issue that we have to provide the necessary resources for psychotherapeutic services and other services that are needed to deal with the addiction, but more, just as importantly, the underlying causes of the addictions as well too. This impacts all of us, all of our communities, and this is something that I take very, very seriously, Matt. Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kevin, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
My name is Kenneth Rogers. I'm
Kenny Rogers?
Yeah. I've heard there's someone who sings with this name. I don't do much singing.
They sell chicken too, or used
Yeah.
to sell chicken. Yeah.
That's right. I don't do that either.
Okay.
I'm a psychologist
Gotcha,
with
gotcha,
Kaiser
gotcha.
Permanente in Elk Grove.
Gotcha.
I usually have to explain where Elk Grove is, but
Can
given
I
your
make an
position,
Can I make an appointment with you soon afterwards?
you know where Elk Grove is.
Yeah, south of Sacramento.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Down
what
to
I
5
want,
and the 99.
yes, that's right.
Yeah. About 20 minutes south. Yeah.
You got it. You know exactly where Elk Grove is.
Jim Cooper's your assembly member.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Richard Pan
Yeah.
is your senator.
Thank you. So he knows more about Elk Grove than I do. Okay, so
I know what your FICO score is too, your credit score.
So what I wanted to tell you was, I think you may be aware of mental health parity and the issues that we've had around it. And, one of the concerns that we have, not only in the organization that I work for, but really in many organizations that do mental health work, is making sure that patients get the same level of care for mental issues that
With
physical
insurers.
patients do.
Yeah.
And one of the main problems with mental health parity is the enforcement of these laws. And I guess I'm asking, what plans do you have to address issues of enforcement of mental health parity as it relates, because it's such an important part of what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah. I've always been, Kenneth, a strong supporter of mental health parity. I know that the insurers have always fought us on mental health parity because, quite frankly, they don't want to pay for it. Yeah, but we realize now that mental health issues are so pervasive, and we all deal with mental health issues to some degree. Others more so. Some others more so, I should say. We've all, in some form, way, or shape, have received some type of psychotherapeutic counseling services, or quite frankly, we should receive psychotherapeutic counseling services. No, and I don't mean this in a comical way. Actually, I think we would all do a lot better in our lives if we received some type of therapy somewhere in that. I've always believed that if you unleashed a whole army of MSWs and licensed clinical social workers, LCSWs, and marriage, family, their MFTs, a whole army into especially poor communities of young men and children who deal with anger issues, who deal with self-esteem issues, who deal with depression and bipolarness and schizophrenia, that if we unleashed a whole army of men and women in the psychotherapeutic field, then we wouldn't have so many folks ending up in prison and ending up in county jails. That we would deal with our issues that we have inside. And so I've always been someone who says that we would all benefit, from dealing with the issues that we all carry inside of us, because we all carry some issues. Trust me, being the youngest child of a single immigrant mother, you carry issues with you in terms of deep-rooted poverty, in terms of, someone knocking at the door asking for the rent, and then who gets access to psychotherapeutic services? Who doesn't get access? If you have a PPO, or in this case an HMO, in this case Kaiser, and the whole parity issue, you see the gross inequities that are embedded within the system of only certain individuals get access to quality, mental health services, and the vast majority of Californians and Americans don't. And then you get into more complex stuff on the issue of ethnicity and a taboo to engage with the psychotherapeutic services, whether in African American communities, Latino communities, Asian American communities. I am a strong supporter of mental health services, number one. We all can benefit from mental health services. We can all benefit from mental health services. And because we know we can all benefit from mental health services, the question is, how do we get the mental health services if we have the inequities, the lack of parity, between someone who perhaps, breaks a leg and goes to the emergency room to Kaiser and needs physical treatment, but then we have the mental treatment that is not viewed on par with your physical maladies that you may have. I'm a big champion of that, and I think we need to move policies with teeth, because I think that's what you're referring to. Policies that have actual teeth that forces the issue with the insurers, and hopefully, we'll have Medicare for all, which we won't have to be dealing with the issue of insurers any longer, picking and choosing who they want to, what types of services or treatments or drugs they want to cover and which ones they don't want to cover. This is a huge issue that we all deal with everyone. Homeless population, veteran population, all of us in our jobs, the stress, the domestic issues that we have with our own kids, everything is, we're not dealing with this issue the way we should be dealing with it. People giving us the strategies, understanding, digging in deep, and I'm not going to try to be a pseudo-psycho analyst, but we all benefit, but the only way to benefit from this is if we have the policies that have the teeth that allow regulators to go in and say, this is not right, you're not doing what you need to be doing, this is the law, and you need to execute the law, and if not, we'll hold you accountable for it. All right.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jason Lubin. I'm a counselor with Janice of Santa Cruz, and I'd like to ask
Is that
you,
a counselor, same thing as Matt?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha.
and I'd like to ask you what is your position on the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United,
We got to overturn it. Let's cut to the chase. We got to overturn it.
and taking corporate PAC money in politics?
I don't think we should have corporate PAC money in politics. We need to overturn Citizens United. We had the decision just recently by the U.S. Supreme Court, which was Janus versus AFSCME, District 31, that is going out its way to make it much more difficult and challenging for members of a collective bargaining unit to have their voices heard on politics and policy matters that matter to the rank and file members as well as the people that they serve. We need less money in politics. God knows that I'm in a race right now where my opponent's a multi-billionaire who's almost funded maybe 85% of her campaign from her own money, from out of her own pocket. But we were lucky enough to navigate a field of 32 candidates to get into the top two with someone who has 95% name recognition because she's been the U.S. Senator for 25 years, a politician for 50 years here in California. So a short answer, we got to overturn Citizens United. And that's why we need a Supreme Court with a Democrat in the White House.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions. Yes.
Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
It's on? Okay. My name is Veronica Atwater.
Good morning,
and
Veronica.
I am an MRI technologist, with the largest radiology company in the nation. And we recently won our election, but RadNet, the company's RadNet, they're refusing to sit down and bargain with us. What are you going to do to strengthen the labor laws to help us sit down and bargain with RadNet? They have oppressive wages, and therefore we called NUHW to help us. And they have so far, but RadNet has been refusing to bargain with us and sit down.
I'm going to make an assumption, Veronica, that the current makeup of the NLRB is toothless as they come, you know. Someone went to the NLRB with this presidential administration and extracted all the very sharp, you know, teeth that organization had at one time. I wish we had card check, EFCA, law that had an opportunity to pass in the U.S. Senate, 50+1, made it very simple, ratify the card check, you know, for those who want to organize and be part of a collective bargaining unit, and therefore legally the employer has to come to the table and negotiate. They have no other choice because the members themselves have chosen. Unfortunately, the current senior senator from California, my opponent, who I wish was here today, opposed EFCA and did not support the Free Choice Act by the employers. But that being said, if given an opportunity, I will be your voice to enact policies that would have sharp teeth to force employers to recognize and respect the will of the workers, that they have organized themselves into a collective bargaining unit, and now you got to sit at the table and you got to start negotiating. That's what the will of the workers organizing is, and you have no other choice. But you need the legal backup to make the employer sit at the table and start negotiating, you know, the terms and conditions of whatever contract that you are negotiating. So knowing me, if you give me that opportunity, Veronica, to be your voice in Washington, I will do that for you.
Okay, final question for this morning. Sister.
Hello, I'm Phyllis Combs. I'm a speech pathologist with
Good morning, Phyllis.
Children's Hospital of Oakland.
Okay.
I have been in the healthcare industry for about 27 years, treating patients. First 10 years, all Medicare, and now with children. I'm all in with the single-payer healthcare system. Could not be more excited about that. But my concern is, as you know, the healthcare lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby is as strong as the NRA. They are going to dig their heels in. Have you guys considered how you are going to get around these guys and try to make this happen? Because that's my biggest concern.
Let me say, you know, Phyllis, let me say this, is that you're absolutely right. The pharmaceutical lobby as well as the healthcare lobby are among the strongest in the country. That's the reason why we can have a sane, rational debate. I don't mind having debate on single payer and Medicare for all, and folks finding flaws in it. You know, no plan is perfect. We figure things out. We have that debate. We have that push and pull. We have that discussion. But when you have a debate that is meant for failure, in other words, they're coming after it. That's a different dynamic altogether. What we did successfully in California is we took on the pharmaceutical company on the issue of drug transparency, and it was a big battle. and my good friend Senator Ed Hernandez, the chair of the recent chair of the Health Committee of the state Senate, really, led us, and I was there to back him up and help him get drug transparency for California. I passed single payer, to the staunch opposition of all the healthcare forces in the state Senate. Unfortunately, it didn't go further on the assembly side. Hopefully maybe next year there'll be a concerted debate and dialogue on this issue next year. But I got it passed on the Senate side. So this is about organizing. This is not just about internal discussions, submitting a bill, whatever, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the U.S. Senate, moving, the United States to a Medicare for all, because we all know that it works best under a federal framework as opposed to individual states. But we need to organize as well too, and we got to take this fight to the Congress, take this fight to the U.S. Senate, take this fight to the doorsteps of the White House, whoever occupies the White House, Democrat or Republican, because at the end of the day, single payer is about quality health care for all Americans. It's not about if you voted for Trump, or it's not about if you voted for Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. This is about healthcare, period. And this is about organizing. You have to organize on the outside. It's not enough to say, I'm introducing Medicare for all, everybody, and then we'll see what happens. It's not going to happen. It's just going to collect dust, in the cloakroom of the U.S. Senate. And then I can do a press release and I can do a Twitter feed saying, I've introduced single payer, Medicare for all system. This is something that you must organize from the outside in putting the pressure. That's why when I say we need each other, we need to back each other and be there for each other. Listen, I've been a member of the State Assembly, Appropriations Chair. I've been the Democratic Caucus Chair for the State Senate, your State Senate. I've been the chair of the Appropriations Committee and the leader, the president of the California State Senate. I know that being a politician, being an elected official is not the panacea. Sometimes folks believe like all chips in, right? This is our savior. With him or her, it's going to get done. This is something that we do together. 100% clean energy. 100% clean energy, we had to organize up and down the state of California. And this is a Democratic majority Assembly and Senate with a Democratic governor. We had to organize environmentalists, clean energy businesses, the American Lung Association because of the dirty air in California, in certain parts of California. I called Al Gore, up, and I even called Arnold Schwarzenegger. External pressure from the outside, organizing, moving forward. So this is what we have to do on an issue like single payer. You know who your foes are, and because it impacts their business model. If single payer Medicare for all was good for them, then they said, let's do it, But ultimately, it's about profits. It's not about the health outcomes of the patients that you all deal with. So it's about organizing. This is a project, an organizing, effort from all of us, all over the country, all over the state, to make sure that our politicians, regardless of where they stand on the aisle, stand up on the issue of health care. And in this instance, what you're referring to, single payer for all, Medicare for all.
Very good.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Kevin, any final comments for us?
Well, yeah, Sal, I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity to share a few words with all of the members of your incredible union. You guys are amazing. The tenacity that you have, I know that you're a fighter, and I've seen you fight up and down the state of California during the good times and the very, very tough times. And we are in a very difficult time in our nation's history. But that reveals our character during the most difficult periods of our time. During the most difficult periods of our time is what reveals our character as individual citizens, as a union, as a state of California. And like I said, I have no doubt that together with NUHW, that we can bring about the real change that we deserve and the real change that we need in Washington, D.C. And not someone who's just on the front line, on the sidelines, I should say, but on the front lines. Because seniority means nothing if you don't use it. Seniority means nothing if you don't use it. And that's why, if we continue to play by the country club rules of Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Senate, we'll never see the progress that we deserve and the progress that our children deserve. And that's why it's time to have that new voice, someone who dared to have the audacity to challenge the status quo and not say, well, wait your turn. Know your place. Because if my mom would have listened to that, she would never have come to the greatest state in the world, California. And in that way, indirectly, all of you are, I'm a product of all of you. You know, I'm not just a proponent of the California dream, but I'm a product of the California dream. This is our dream, and we want to keep this dream alive for everyone and for generations to come. With that, thank you very much, Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, for Kevin De Leon.